Welcome to Concussion Talk Podcast. I'm Nick Mercer. This is episode 73, and I'll be introducing and interviewing my new co-host, Erin Guilfoyle.
Hi everyone, my name is Erin Guilfoyle. I'm the Coordinator of Programs and Services for the Newfoundland and Labrador Brain Injury Association. I'm very excited to be joining Nick on the podcast here and talking to you all, hopefully every week.
Okay, thanks, Erin. So, can you just tell the listener now, your listener now, a little more about yourself and your background and how you got involved?
Yeah, so I'm originally from New Brunswick actually, and I moved to Newfoundland after high school to go to Memorial University for my undergraduate degree. There I completed a Bachelor of Science in Behavioral Neuroscience and also a Certificate of Criminology. After attending Memorial University for my undergrad, I was still kind of unsure of where to go with the psychology degree and the knowledge of neuroscience, and I wanted a way to apply the academic knowledge I had about the brain in a real way to the community. From then, I discovered the Brain Disorders Management Graduate Certificate at Mohawk College in Hamilton, Ontario. So last year, I moved away again and attended there for the past year of the graduate certificate. I just graduated technically yesterday, actually, and was lucky enough to get a job back here in Newfoundland where I really want to be.
So, Erin, what got you interested in the brain or in the brain injury, first off?
So originally when I started to do my behavioral neuroscience degree, I really wasn't sure entirely that I was interested in the brain yet, but as it kept going, the passion grew further and further, and I really wanted a way to connect the academic and community side of things. This was from a personal experience as well. When about 4 years ago, my grandmother had a stroke, and it was a pretty severe one. She ended up having aphasia, which is the disorder of losing the ability to speak, and this kind of inspired me to want to learn more about the brain and how to help her. From New Brunswick, which is where my family is, I noticed that there was a lot of resources that lacked. And when I went to Ontario, this was even more abundantly clear that there were so many resources there and different programs and opportunities for anyone who's had a stroke or any brain injury to avail of, compared to my home province and pretty much any province within the Atlantic bubble now. And I really wanted to be able to bring the skills that I was learning in Ontario back here and kind of grow that community and the systems that we can help brain injury survivors here without them having to travel to Toronto or anywhere else.
So how did you find out about this job and how did you get involved in Newfoundland? Obviously you did your undergrad here, so you knew people, knew the situation here, but how did you go from Hamilton and Fredericton back to St. John's?
Yeah, so of course the pandemic came in March, and I ended up moving back home to Fredericton with my parents just for the time being instead of being in a cramped little apartment in Ontario. I started looking for jobs and everything. My internships for my program were canceled, unfortunately, so I was just kind of like, what do I do? Oh my goodness, I think every young graduate this summer during the pandemic has had the same thoughts of how do I move forward? So I started looking up all these brain injury associations, anything I could possibly get into. I did have a previous job where I was a support worker for children with autism, but then I was just kind of working the shift work, the night shifts, wasn't really enjoying it as much as I possibly could, and so I started looking further. One day I think I just Googled brain injury associations, and the Newfoundland Labrador one came up, and I was like, I had no idea this even existed, and I was there for 5 years. So I gave them a call, and lucky enough for me, the president of the association, Marina White, answered the phone, and I pretty much just asked, hey, are you guys hiring? Of course, they said no, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but she encouraged me to forward my resume, and I gave her a bit of a background about myself and why I was passionate about helping brain injury survivors. And about a month after, I'd kind of forgotten about the fact that I'd even called her and all of that, and she calls me back and asked if I was still looking for employment because she was impressed by my resume.
So there was no job per se at the time, but what your job now? What is your job, your title now, and what do you do for the Range Association?
Yeah, so I'm currently the coordinator of programs and services, and essentially my job is to act as the advocate, educator, and referral person for any brain injury survivor within Newfoundland and Labrador. Um, I'll basically the few things I've done in the past couple months has been
Because you just started, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I just started in August and moved up here about mid-August and got started right away. A lot of things have changed when you try to start a job and work in the pandemic whatsoever. So any of the educational presentations that I've done have had to be virtual. A lot of the fundraising initiatives we've had to do have just had to be online. And any campaigns whatsoever are pretty much just trying to advocate to the media to get our message out instead of just being out in the community because it's so much harder now. And all those restrictions are something that I never
Are
thought.
people as receptive now? Well, you don't have experience, but with people, the receptiveness here. But
Yeah.
do you find that they're receptive now, or is it more difficult they can't actually go and see them and go and do talks?
I would say it's receptive but different. So before, if I wanted to give a talk in person, you can read everyone's face, you can kind of tell
Yeah,
how they're getting your message kind of thing. But
yeah,
now doing things virtually, it's much harder to ask them if you can come in and set up the Zoom call and all of that.
yeah,
Like I did a presentation the other week for my mom's a teacher, and I did a presentation for her class, and like that went really well. But I only got that in because it was my mother,
yeah,
and
yeah,
trying to get a
yeah,
hold of teachers here and like advocate and say, hey, can you do a presentation? Like I'll do it on Zoom. All of this.
yeah.
It's a lot of work for them. It's a lot of undue stress, and I completely understand. But I still think it's really important that keep trying. You have to keep doing those educational things. Fundraising is another big one that we've noticed is more difficult. Like we can't go into stores anymore and sell 50-50 tickets.
Yeah.
That used to be where a large chunk of our sales would come from, and now it's just all online, and people will only see so much of their news feed. Like,
Yeah, that's true. So this is great that you're doing this podcast. It means you're having a co-host who can relate to what's actually going on the ground, as they say. And so so you're open to do more online activity now with the fundraising and just announcing events and whatnot. So
yeah, and we're hoping to do a few webinars as well, just about topics and release those. Currently, by next week, I would say, hopefully when this is out, we're going to be recruiting volunteers for fundraising, social media, and public relations and HR committees. And I really want to get a lot of people on board with those and help me out in the terms of creative ways that they can think of for doing things online, because that's kind of going to be the new world that we're living in. And a lot of the training that I want to be able to do will be centered around seniors and those with disabilities, and trying to get materials for them if they require accommodations for online materials like enlargement screens, voice to text recognition, all of that, and kind of just push those out and see what the need is here as well.
So, well, unless you have more information about when Erin does have more information about events or recruiting drives or fundraising events, and we'll just have a spot in every podcast where she'll tell us about that. And but we'll go back more to your background, I guess. What did you learn at MUN, first at Memorial University of Newfoundland and Labrador? For those of you who don't know, that's what MUN stands for. But what did you learn at MUN that was I mean, behavioral neuroscience? So explain that a bit, I guess.
Yeah, so behavioral neuroscience is technically under a psychology degree here. You do a lot of science courses with it, but it's pretty much learning about the brain and its structures. It's a lot of the academic knowledge as you would with a university, and you pretty much, it's a lot of kind of, not to say boring, because I thought it was really interesting, but a lot of people would find it very dense material, just knowing the brain structures, knowing what they do, knowing how neurons fire, how they work, all of that kind of interrelated stuff.
Yeah.
When I went to Mohawk, that's kind of more of the easier to explain in a way, because a lot more people can relate to how you connect with a community versus like the anatomy of a brain. But at Mohawk, we did, it was a 1 year certificate program. And we did a lot of hands on skills. So we would do conversation techniques with people. So that related to with my grandmother. It was a really interesting part. You would do workshops for aphasia patients and learning how to give breaks to someone who needs more time to speak and learning what talking points to write down on a whiteboard if you had to do supportive conversation techniques, learning about photo walls and schedules and all those kind of things that would be related to anyone who required photo steps in order to get a task done. We also did brain anatomy labs, so it was more so instead of memorizing.
Brain what? Brain
anatomy labs.
Anatomy lab. Okay.
Yeah, so we went to McMaster, we went to the anatomy lab there, and we got to hold a brain and everything. So it was a more hands-on way of learning it versus the textbook memorize this. We also did digital storytelling projects, so we had experience with making a video for a type of brain disorder, and then we were lucky enough to be able to have the opportunity to publish it as well.
Cool.
And essentially, the program there really, really aimed to try to get you out in the community and connect it to as many people as possible, which was great in Ontario because there's so many places around that you can work with and network to. So I was happy to be doing that, and I worked with Synapse Life Sciences competition and connected with groups and through there. We had a lot of guest speakers, like the Ontario Brain Injury Association came, March of Dimes came, the Adult Recreation Therapy Center. There were so many different things that came in and spoke to us, and we had the opportunities to network in such a great way. I hope now, too, with the pandemic, that their classes are the same in a way, but different, just because it was so interesting to have that experience.
So what kind of questions do people ask you when they come in or email you at the Brain Injury Association here?
I find a lot of the questions or calls I'll get from clients currently go around the fact that, one, they didn't know that we were here and they don't know what resources are in their area. Newfoundland and Labrador is at a disadvantage in the sense that a lot of our communities are rural and it's harder to access services. So a lot of my job goes around trying to connect people to the best way to help them. We're in St. John's, so there's more clinics here that can help them out, but even then, there's only about 2 that really actually focus into concussions or brain injury. And in terms of counseling as well, there's, from what I can find, only 2 counselors that would specialize with brain injury knowledge. So it's been a lot of reaching out to people, asking what they do, which is interesting in a pandemic as well, because not as many people answer their emails or in the office.
Fewer people around, I guess, to do stuff,
Yeah, but it's in this time, too, that we're in even more need because people are isolated. They can't get out to, like, usual social circles. Even for our own association, we've had to put our recreation weekly meeting on hold because it's not safe to gather. We're hoping by next year we'll have that up and running, but that's why it's kind of so important to me to get these online resources out and have ways that our survivors can access support systems even from home.
And what aspects of recovery, of the therapy, rehab, whatever it is, would you say are the most important parts for, well, not necessarily here, but for general, like you learned at Mohawk, for example? What do you think were the best, most effective means of therapy and rehab?
Honestly, having a good support system is always the number one thing in order to succeed within your rehab or physical therapy. If you don't have someone in your corner or even believe in yourself to get motivated and get it done, you're probably not going to. So I think having a support system behind you, whether it's online virtual community that you can go to and ask questions and say you're having a crappy day, it's the support that is what motivates you to keep going forward.
Yeah, I've noticed actually on my website, not website, but my Facebook page and Twitter and Instagram, a lot more people who just say, or not even to say my pages, but on people that follow or associated concussion or brain injury, about how they understand and how it's very difficult, but it's just I mean the people are looking for people to talk to and to understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
And I guess we have whoever we can find, whether it's family or friends or just people online that you meet that are actually not just there for some weird reason, which people often are online, but but they're just if you can find someone who's got your understands you as a and what you're going through, and that's very important too. Yeah. So
Yeah, and I myself have never suffered a concussion or any brain injury, but I understand that the value of having people who do understand that is immense.
yeah,
So I'm always happy to try to connect survivors together and support them in whatever way I possibly can through referral or through my background knowledge. But the connection you feel to someone who actually understands in a way is much more significant than anything else.
and your NLBA, if you found where online now, where are they online?
So if you search NLBIA.com, you'll come to our website. NL Brain Injury Association is us on Facebook, and NLBIA 2020
Yeah,
is on Twitter. Yeah,
on Instagram
and on Instagram. Yeah,
and Twitter, same thing.
Yeah.
On Twitter, it's just NLBA.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on Instagram, it's NLBA 2020.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, and Aaron will be, of course, be here for the remainder of the the remainder. Who knows? Like for a while on these podcasts for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And we're gonna just in the same as you, but Aaron will provide different perspective and a different take on things, and look forward to just having someone to riff with it more, and we'll try to get a better sound arrangement going on here. I think we'll get a mic or something. I used to use a headset, but it's like a personal thing. It's only so get a mic because the sound is me seems a bit lower, seems a bit lower to me. So try to improve that. But
Yeah. Let us know if the sound wasn't great or anything. It's a work in progress. Today, I just really wanted to be able to introduce myself and a little bit about me before you just start hearing my voice all the time in podcasts.
Great. Well, yeah, and so is there any? If you ever have any comments about this podcast or anything, just please use Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Well, it's hard to tweet unless you or text unless you have a picture to comment on. But comment on the posts and let us know what your thoughts are, what subjects you are interested in hearing about. Because Erin had some knowledge and some good experience in those areas too. So
yeah, and the better your questions are, the better I can prepare. So I'll bring all the knowledge I possibly can to any thoughts you may have or concepts you're concerned about, and we can try to find guests too that would have even more knowledge on the area.
And we'll what kind of goodbye segment or something to say bye because I'm just saying thank you and bye now, but I'm going to say thank you to Erin necessarily because she's here every week, but I guess say thank you is not going to be bad, but thanks Erin, and we'll work on something that will be a better ending to the podcast.
Right now, thank you everyone.
Concussion Talk podcast is presented by HeadCheck Health. HeadCheck Health bridges the gaps in concussion care through simple, powerful technology. Join organizations like the Canadian Football League, Track Factory Racing, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, Eastern Washington University, and Volleyball Canada, who rely on HeadCheck Health to improve communication and optimize care. Visit headcheckhealth.com for more.
The music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com